Hi, I'm Lara, and I want to welcome you to Adventures in Creating, the place where I take you on an adventure to create something hopefully awesome. Today we are doing the final video in our Thanksgiving series. So we are going to be making sweet potatoes. We are actually going to be using a recipe that my family has used for years. As long as I can remember, this is what we've done. So I'm going to be sharing that with you. This is a great recipe. It doesn't take terribly long. It's pretty simple, and the flavor is delightful. It's that nice, it's got bright flavors from citrus, because we're doing orange sweet potato casserole, but we also have the sweet elements of the sweet potato, and of course a little bit of sugar. So please stay tuned and come join me as we go on our adventure. The ingredients you will need for this recipe are sweet potatoes, of course, and you will also need 2 oranges. You'll need some salt, some pepper, some butter, and some brown sugar. You'll also want to make sure you have a knife, a zester, or a grater if you don't have a zester. Also, you're going to want something to squeeze out the orange juice. Also, don't forget, you'll want a cutting board to cut things up, and also I recommend having a casserole dish or other container to bake your sweet potatoes in. With our sweet potatoes, they're currently rock hard, and that is okay. We want them to be. So what we're going to do is we need to cook them and soften them. We'll be doing that in the microwave. So take your fork, which I didn't mention you needed, and give them a few stabs. Basically, we want to be able to let the steam come out of them as they cook. Now, you could, of course, cook these in the oven. That is probably a more traditional way to do this, but I usually default to putting them in my microwave. I just check them after about every 5 minutes, and we're going to go do that. Potatoes are in, and I'm going to set this 5 minutes and let them cook. I finished cooking my sweet potatoes. They are soft. I squeeze them. There's also a little bit of liquid that's come out. If you aren't sure, especially if you have maybe bigger sweet potatoes that you're cooking, you can always insert a knife, preferably a small one, not a big one, but it should slide in pretty easily. Because the idea is we're going to want this to be smushed up and mashed. So now what I will do is I'll take one of the potatoes, I will cut it in half, and basically I'm just going to work on scooping out the insides. I did let my potatoes cool a little bit, and I recommend this if you don't want to be kind of dodging burnt fingers. And I'm scooping out. You could, of course, peel these with a smaller paring knife. No shame in doing that. I just find that usually the spoon works fairly well, and I'm putting them right into our casserole pan, and I'm using a clear glass pan, just putting it right in. No need to add another dish. So that was the first half, and I'm taking the other half. Same thing, just sticking my spoon in right close to the skin and scooping out all that tasty, yummy goodness. It's a beautiful orange color, which is perfect for the season. And I'm going to keep doing that until I have scooped out all of these, and I'll meet you back up when we have finished. now that we've gotten all of our sweet potatoes scraped out and we have them just kind of here, what I'm going to do is loosely smush them. Basically, I am just, oh, and that one's a little bit harder, but that's okay because they will be baking in the oven. Basically, I am just spreading out our sweet potatoes. They are pretty soft. We are able to smush them down and just spreading it out. It does not have to be a perfect covering of this. This doesn't have to look perfect yet because we are still going to be adding some other ingredients into this. And so I'm just, like I said, even covering so we have a baseline of where to go. Now that my sweet potatoes are all kind of spread in there, what I'm going to do is I'm moving on to the next components of our dish. Now we're going to take our oranges, really important part of the dish, and we are going to do what's called zesting them. Basically, what that is you take an item like this and you're trying to scrape off the orange exterior. You could do this with any citrus, but to make this recipe, we're going to be using oranges. And I'm just getting off the skin. And you can see here the little bits of orange. It's just really small particles. It's hardly possible to see there. But we are going to do that for both of these oranges to get, oh my goodness, all of the orange skin off. Now, I will show you. Here's my orange where I started to do that. You want to scrape this down, only the orange part. Once you get past the orange and start getting into, I guess, the white part of it, it's going to taste bitter. So you will have to check periodically. Don't just go crazy. And some of you might be saying, well, could I just grate this? I would recommend against that. It's not that you couldn't. In fact, that's actually how my family used to make this dish when I was growing up. We would grate the orange peel and have these big long strips of orange in our sweet potato. And it's not that that's terrible, except that if you bite into a slice of that orange peel, then it's a little bitter, it's a little off-putting, and your mouth gets filled with that flavor. So you can see here, we're starting to get down slight coloration change. That is about as far as you want to go, and we move on to the next section. So I will continue to zest these, and I will meet you back after I have finished that. I finished zesting my oranges, and you can see it just kind of looks a little bit like orange goop. Not unsimilar to that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to juice these oranges, and I like to just sort of pound them a little bit to get the juice separated from the membrane, the walls of the fruit a little. And I'm going to cut this in half. Be careful that you don't cut yourself. And we bring our bowl, take this fancy little thing, it's a juicer of sorts, and just squeeze, rotate and squeeze. The idea is we are getting the juice out of the oranges and into the bowl. And you'll get a good amount of juice from this. Obviously, if you have a different device that will get the juice out, feel free to use that. Like if you actually own one of those electric juicers, go for it. Save yourself the time of squeezing it by hand. But otherwise, you have this. And if some of the orange, not skin, but say the meat of the orange, so like some of these parts that you would normally eat fall in, that's okay. This is going to be orange flavored. So this is squeezed out pretty well, and I'm just going to squeeze the other bits, and I will meet you up after I have juiced my oranges. So now we have juiced our oranges. And I love the smell of citrus, of orange. It's so fresh. Now into our juice and our zest, we're going to put a little bit of salt. We don't need a whole lot, but you do want some salt in your recipe. So I'm going to take about a half teaspoon and put that right on in. And then we are going to also add a little bit of pepper, just to add a little more zing, a little bit of pop. And this I'm going to add even less. I'm going to add a quarter teaspoon. Main reason is we want this dish to be a sweet, warm, comforting dish. We don't want this to be so abrasive that it's going to jump up in your face. Now that fork I used earlier to poke the sweet potatoes before they went in the microwave, I'm actually going to use that here just to stir up the salt, the zest, and the juice. This adds a delightful flavor. Very citrus, very fresh, it brings the flavors alive. The sweet potato and the citrus pair very nicely. So now that we have this, we are going to pour this right onto our smushed up sweet potatoes. All across all of it, yay. And I'm going to give this just a little bit of a stirring of sorts. This is not a real thorough one. I'm just trying to make sure the juice touches all the different parts of the sweet potato. You could, of course, if you wanted, you could blend this all together and use a bowl and a hand blender. I'm not doing that. I'm not taking the time to do that. I'm just going to do it this way. It will bake together. It will be fabulous. My family will devour this. And quite frankly, I'm going to have to stop myself from devouring this before they get to it. But this is one of my favorite Thanksgiving holiday dishes because it is so comforting. It's just a good reminder of the season that we're using our fall type vegetable, the sweet potato, a root vegetable that is hardy and endures a long time, and yet you have the freshness of there's more to come in the year, in the life, and to me it's exciting. I like when my food can represent my sentiments of the season. So that's been very loosely mixed, and this is a little smoother, it looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to set my bowl to the side, and we are going to take our brown sugar. And as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, that if you don't have brown sugar on hand, you could do other substitutes. You could, of course, use honey. You could use maple syrup. You could use white sugar. You could use a mixture of white sugar and molasses. There are options you have. I am not going to be doing that. I will be using brown sugar. I think that's the easiest. It's also pretty easy to find in your store. And what I like to do with this is I just take a handful, which probably close to maybe a third of a cup, and I sprinkle this on. You could do less, you could do more, depending on your preference. You could even, of course, be creative and add things like marshmallows. Lots of people like the marshmallows on these sweet potato dishes. It's not to say they aren't delightful. I just feel like that's usually too sweet, usually too much. And just about done, and I just sprinkle this using my eyeball. I will have an amount in the recipe that I post on my website, so if you want to see exactly how much I use, then of course I will make that available. I'm going to set my brown sugar to the side, and I'm going to rinse off my hand because it's coated in that. And then I'll meet you up and we'll add our butter. I also forgot to mention, make sure you preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, that is. Now, I did that, and now I'm going to take our butter. Yay, butter. Always so good. And this I will be doing about a 1/4 tablespoon in a few sections. I am doing this just because the butter helps the flavor. It also helps the sugar to caramelize a little bit. So I'm going to be doing this across a few different sections. There we go, and do another section. Thin pats, and I break this in half. Now, our casserole here, our sweet potato orange casserole, this is ready to pop into the oven. So as soon as my oven is finished preheating, I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to bake this for about 20 minutes. I will check it at 20 minutes. It's going to take between 20 and 30 minutes, just depending on how you have set this up. So I will meet you up back here once I have pulled this out of the oven. I just pulled out my orange sweet potato casserole, and it smells perfect. Oh my goodness, I wish you could smell this, but if you make this, you can smell it for yourself. So this is done. You can see the sugar has melted as well as the butter has melted into it. It's a nice even color, and this is warmed through. That is the big point. So you could do this where you prepare the sweet potatoes ahead of time and keep it in your fridge, and then bake it right when it's ready on serving day. Total time was about 25 minutes in the oven baking. Now I'm going to scoop out a little bite and meet you up for a wrap up. Did you have fun? Did you go on your adventure? I hope you did. I hope you were able to make this very nice orange sweet potato casserole. As I mentioned at the beginning of my video, this is a recipe my family has made for as long as I can remember. And this, I don't think a Thanksgiving is ever complete without it. Oh yes. You have the bright flavors of citrus, which I made this with orange. I would love to hear if you decide to make this with a different type of citrus fruit, such as lemon or grapefruit. Please leave a comment. Let me know. I want to hear about this. I want to hear how my traditions are being shared with you and others like you. Also, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell so you can be notified when I put out new videos. Also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, those fun places, to see what else I'm doing. Because trust me, I do a lot of stuff. So I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed making this. Like I said, let me know if you did. And also like or dislike this video. And make sure you stay tuned, because now we are moving on to the winter/Christmas season. So we are going to be doing some very nice crafts to decorate your home to make it seem more in the seasonal holiday mood. And we're going to also be making some great recipes that you will not want to miss out on, including, which will be next week, your own homemade eggnog from scratch, which, trust me, if you haven't tried this yet, you are missing out, because this is so good and it is so worth making. So join me next week, same place, same time. And I'm Laura. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.